the gold miner, locked her in his shack, but a drifter broke the door. The shack smelled of damp earth and sweat, the kind that clung to wood when it had soaked too many storms and seen too little sunlight. Eliza sat in the corner, her wrists raw where rope burned into skin. Outside, the Nevada wind whistled across the gulch, carrying the hiss of dry sage. The world kept moving beyond those four rotten walls, but she was trapped, her voice hoarse from calling for help that never came. She'd come west with dreams, following her father and younger brother after their mother passed, thinking the gold fields would give them a new beginning. Instead, fever had taken her father and hunger had claimed her brother. By the time she found work in the mining town of Prospect Ridge, she had only her courage left. But courage wasn't enough against Nathan Kelt, the miner who'd spotted her washing clothes at the river. He had a heavy hand, a hollow heart, and a shack hidden in the canyon where he meant to keep her like a possession. That first night, she tried to reason with him. "You can't keep me here," she whispered, her voice shaking but steady with defiance. Nathan just smirked, setting down his pickaxe and kicking dust over the lantern flame. "Out here, girl, nobody's gonna tell me what I can't do." The door slammed, the lock clicked, and darkness swallowed her whole. Her body trembled, but her mind refused to bend. She thought of her brother's laugh, the way he used to tuck wildflowers behind his ear to make her smile. She thought of her father, who'd told her the West would test her soul but never steal it. She clung to those memories like lifelines. Days blurred into nights. Nathan left scraps of bread and bitter coffee, and every time he opened that door, she searched his face for mercy and found only greed. She prayed to God, to the wind, to anyone listening beyond the canyon walls. Her lips cracked, her knees bruised from the dirt floor, yet her heart whispered, "Someone will come. Someone must." On the third night, a storm rolled through. Rain lashed. The shack and thunder cracked like gunfire across the valley. She pressed her cheek against the gap in the boards and let the drops sting her face. For the first time, she cried, not for herself, but for the life she was missing, the chance to be more than a miner's stolen prize. Out there, somewhere, the world was wide and waiting. She had no way of knowing that on that very storm road, a drifter with dust in his beard and hunger in his eyes was following the river, looking for shelter. And fate, hard, cruel, but sometimes merciful, was about to bend their trails toward each other. The storm broke by morning, leaving the land smelling of wet pine and iron-rich mud. Eliza dozed fitfully against the shack wall, her rope-burned wrists throbbing when she heard it, footsteps crunching the gravel outside. Not Nathan's heavy, deliberate tread. This was different, slower, cautious, like someone half afraid to be heard. The door rattled and her heart leapt. She forced her dry lips to part. "Please, help me," she whispered, her voice raw from silence. A pause, then a voice. Low, weathered, uncertain. "Who's in there?" Hope flared in her chest. "My name is Eliza. He's keeping me locked in. Please, before he comes back." The man outside hesitated, palm pressed against the wood. His clothes were road-worn, a duster frayed at the cuffs, boots caked in river mud, a wide-brimmed hat dripping from the rain. His name was Samuel Hart, though he hadn't spoken it aloud in weeks. He'd been drifting ever since leaving behind, a war he wished he could forget, trading one ghost town for another. He had promised himself not to get tangled in other folks' troubles. Yet hearing that trembling voice inside the shack stirred something he couldn't ignore. He tested the door, found it locked from the outside. "Don't be afraid," he said gently, eyes scanning the ridge. "I've got a way with stubborn locks." Eliza pressed her forehead to the crack between the boards. Through it, she saw only a sliver of his face, a strong jaw dusted with stubble, eyes that carried weariness, but also a kindness she hadn't seen in months. "Please," she whispered again, almost breaking. Samuel's hand tightened around the handle. He could almost hear his mother's voice, soft and insistent. "A man's worth ain't measured in gold, Samuel, but in what he's willing to stand for." He drew a deep breath, decision hardening inside him. The sound of horses in the distance jolted him. Nathan was returning. Samuel's time was running short. He scanned the ground, spotted a loose iron bar by the fire pit. With one swift motion, he jammed it into the lock and twisted. The wood groaned. Inside, Eliza's heart hammered with every crack and splinter. Then, with a final wrench, the lock gave way. The door creaked open, lantern light spilling across her pale, dirt-streaked face. Their eyes met for the first time. Hers wide with fear and fragile hope, his steady with the unspoken promise that she would not be left behind. "Come on," he said softly, holding out his hand. Her trembling fingers touched his, and though she knew danger still crouched on the horizon, something fierce and alive surged in her chest. For the first time since being taken, she believed in rescue. If you're still in the saddle with them, tap like, subscribe, and ring the bell. This trail only gets wilder. The sound of hooves clattered nearer, each strike on rock ringing like a warning bell. Samuel's grip on Eliza's hand tightened. "Stay behind me," he muttered, guiding her out into the morning chill. The canyon air bit sharp. The storm, clouds still dragging their shadows across the land. Nathan Kelt appeared on horseback, a hulking figure in a weather-stained coat, his eyes narrowing as he spotted the open shack. The moment his gaze landed on Samuel and Eliza, rage twisted his face into something savage. "You son of a—" Nathan snarled, swinging down from the saddle. His boots struck the ground heavy, his hand already on the butt of his revolver. "She's mine. I paid for her keep with my sweat and blood in these hills. You don't know who you're crossing." Samuel stepped forward, placing himself between Nathan and Eliza. "She ain't property," he said, voice calm but carrying steel. "And I don't much care who you think you are." Nathan's laugh was dark and joyless. "You think you're a hero, stranger? Men like me built this town, pulled gold from the rock while drifters like you drank it away." He spat in the dirt, hand hovering over his gun. "Walk away while you can." Eliza's heart pounded as she pressed against the shack wall, eyes darting between them. She remembered nights of chains, bruises, the way Nathan's gaze stripped her of humanity. Now, with Samuel standing tall before her, she found herself whispering a prayer not just for safety, but for him. The silence stretched, heavy with the weight of choices. Then Nathan's hand jerked, reaching for his revolver. Samuel moved. Faster. With the iron bar still clenched in his hand, he swung hard, catching Nathan's wrist before the gun cleared leather. The revolver clattered into the mud. Nathan roared, grabbing Samuel's collar, and the two men crashed into the side of the shack. The wood splintered under their weight, dust raining down. Samuel fought with a quiet fury, each blow fueled not by glory but necessity. Nathan was stronger, driven by raw greed, but Samuel's resolve was forged from a different fire, the fire of a man who knew what it meant to lose too much already. He caught Nathan across the jaw with his elbow, then drove the iron bar into his ribs. Nathan stumbled, gasping, but in the same breath snatched up a knife from his boot. The blade flashed in the weak sunlight. Samuel froze for a fraction too long, long enough for the knife to graze his side. He hissed, the sting of blood searing his skin. Eliza, trembling but unbroken, darted forward. She snatched the fallen, revolver from the mud, her small hands heavy around the grip. "Stop!" she cried, pointing it straight at Nathan. The miner froze, surprise flickering across his face. For the first time, he saw her not as a possession, but as a woman standing in defiance, with fire in her eyes. Samuel, blood on his shirt but unbowed, stepped up beside her. "It's over, Kelt," he said, voice steady. For a heartbeat, the canyon held its breath, the storm's echo whispering through the pines. Nathan's chest rose and fell like a bull cornered in the pen, his knife still glinting in his hand. But the sight of Eliza's steady aim with his own revolver made his sneer falter. For all his bluster, he could not mistake the truth. The girl he thought broken had found her voice, and she had it pointed at his heart. "Drop it," Samuel said, blood seeping warm through his torn shirt. His stance never wavered, though pain pressed sharp into every breath. For a long, tense moment, Nathan's eyes darted between them. Finally, with a curse spat low through his teeth, he let the knife fall into the mud. His hands raised half-heartedly, a mocking grin still playing at his lips. "Think you can outrun me? This land's mine. The ridges, the rivers. They all answer to me." Samuel didn't reply. He only took Eliza's free hand, steadying her trembling fingers around the revolver. Then with a curt nod, they began to back away. Step by step, they retreated into the pines until the miners' curses faded into the canyon's echo. The wilderness swallowed them whole. The forest floor was slick with rain, the scent of sage and wet earth clinging to their clothes. Samuel's side burned with every step, but he pressed on, guiding Eliza through the thicket. She kept pace, her bare feet torn from days in the shack, yet she never asked to stop. "Why'd you do it?" she asked at last, her voice breaking the hush of the woods. "Why risk yourself for me?" Samuel glanced at her, his jaw tight. "'Cause no soul deserves to be caged. Not out here. Not anywhere." Her throat tightened at his words, and she blinked back tears she hadn't allowed herself before. His kindness was like a river she'd forgotten how to drink from. They crossed a ridge as night fell, the moon silvering the land in pale light. In the distance, coyotes howled, a reminder that danger wore many faces. Samuel staggered once, hand pressing to his side. Eliza rushed to support him, her small frame straining against his weight. "Sit," she urged, guiding him to a fallen log. She tore strips from her skirt, binding his wound with clumsy but earnest hands. Her fingers brushed his skin, and for a moment their eyes met in the moonlight, hers filled with gratitude, his shadowed with a gentleness that startled her. The rustle of brush snapped them both alert. Samuel's hand went instinctively for the iron bar, but what broke from the trees wasn't Nathan. It was a riderless horse, its reins tangled in bramble. Nathan's horse. Samuel's gaze hardened. The miner was still out there, and he wouldn't give up. "We have to keep moving," Samuel said, pushing himself to his feet despite the pain. Together they mounted the horse, Eliza clutching Samuel's waist as they galloped into the vast prairie night. The stars blazed above them, the earth endless beneath. Behind them, Nathan's vow clung to the wind like smoke. He would follow, he would hunt, he would not forget. But in that moment, wind. Tearing through her hair, her arms around the man who had shattered her chains, Eliza felt freedom, fragile but alive. The prairie stretched out wide and silent, painted silver by the dawn. Samuel and Eliza rode until the horse's flanks heaved, until the ache in Samuel's wound became a fire that could not be ignored. When at last they reached the river's edge, they slid from the saddle, collapsing into the tall grass. For a long while, neither spoke. The current moved slow and steady, carrying with it branches and blossoms torn loose by the storm. Samuel leaned against a boulder, hand pressed firm to his side. His breath came shallow, but his eyes never left her. Eliza crouched beside him, scooping river water in her palms to bathe his wound. "You should have left me," she whispered, her voice heavy with the weight of what-ifs. "You could have walked away." Samuel caught her wrist, weak but insistent. "And leave you to that brute? I've run from too many ghosts already." His gaze softened, threaded with something she had not expected, a tenderness that reached past her scars. "You gave me a reason to stop drifting." Tears filled her eyes, hot and unashamed. For months, she had lived as if the world owed her nothing but suffering. Now, looking into his worn face, she felt the faint but undeniable bloom of hope. Behind them, the prairie was quiet. Nathan's trail had gone cold, swallowed by the night. Maybe he would search, maybe he would curse their names across the canyons. But here by the river, for the first time in too long, they were safe. Eliza pulled from her pocket a ribbon, tattered, the last thing her little brother had given her before fever took him. She tied it around Samuel's arm, over the rough bandage she had made. "Then carry this," she said softly, "so you don't forget what you fought for." His eyes shone, and he touched her hand with a reverence she had not thought possible in the Wild West. In that moment, the river carried away more than water. It carried away chains, fear, and loneliness, leaving behind only the fragile seed of something new. The sun broke over the horizon, gilding the grass in light. Samuel shifted, wincing, then offered her a smile. "Reckon we've both got a long trail ahead," he said. She smiled back, faint but certain. "Then we'll ride it together." They sat in silence, watching the river roll on, their shoulders brushing like two branches leaning into the same current. The land was still harsh, still unforgiving, but love, born of fire, of fight, of survival, had staked its claim here too. If Eliza's courage and heart touched something quiet and true inside your soul, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Out here in the Wild West, love may be hard-won, but it's always worth the fight. Join us for more stories of grit, sacrifice, and hearts that endure against all odds.